Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to In Time. Thank you so much for joining us. If any of you have been following Operator Starsky's channel, and I highly recommend you do, it is in the link below. You know that he is in Donbass right now, and we've been in touch with him. We've been speaking with him. He is going to try to join us, but he has informed me that his internet connection out there is not suitable for reliable streaming, and he is trying to reach us right now. We have been talking with him. He's in the field. There's not much we can do about it. Obviously, we're hoping he stays safe. That's one hell of an area to be in right now. So, yeah. So that's it. We're still waiting to see if he can connect. He has the link. Obviously, you know, this is actually our 40th Starsky show, and you know, especially we knew, and we said this. We saw Starsky very, very regularly during the winter, and we said repeatedly, you know, once the summer hits, we're not going to see him nearly as often. He's going to be very busy, and you know, the offensive is underway, and so he's just not always available. So he's out in the field right now. We do have with us Commander Lance McMillan. Commander, how are you?
I'm doing great.
So could you please give us a rundown of who you are and what your qualifications are for this discussion that we are about to have?
Sure. I'm a retired U.S. naval officer. I had a specialty while I was on active duty in operational logistics and also amphibious operations. I was a graduate of the U.S. Naval War College and of the U.S. Staff and Command College. I'm a fully certified Joint Service Officer. I was also the lead logistical planner for the the buildup of forces in Kuwait preparatory for the invasion of Iraq.
Well, we are very lucky to have you, and for those of you who watch regularly, you know we have Commander Lance McMillan and Operator Starsky every Friday at 3 p.m. The other thing you already know, but I'm going to remind people for those who are interested. When we first asked Operator Starsky to come on and to assist us in our weekly Ukraine updates, we do these updates because we believe they're very important. We believe Ukraine is underestimated in the U.S. For its importance, both to the U.S. and just as a humanitarian crisis. We believe that this is something that needs to be addressed and understood. We're very proud to be able to do that. We asked Operator Starsky if he would come on every week, and we told him that we would be delighted to give all the revenue from these shows in their entirety to the volunteer organization of his choice. He chose the Vatra volunteer organization. You'll find a link to it below. If you would like to donate to it directly, please go ahead. But any super chats, anything that super stickers, anything like that today on any Starsky show, whether he can make it or not, goes 100% to the Vatra volunteer organization, and we're very pleased to be able to do that. So just a quick reminder of that for today's show. Commander, it's been about a week. Can you fill us in on what's been going on?
It's kind of the same as it was last time we talked. It's small incremental gains in certain sectors along the front line. There's nothing so far that indicates the Ukrainians have committed their reserves. They're still holding somewhere between 8 to 10 brigades out of the action, hoping to achieve, I assume, a breakthrough of the fairly heavily fortified Russian front lines. Once that occurs, then they will probably commit a significant portion of those reserves to exploit that breakthrough. And everybody's hoping that what we'll see is something similar to what we saw last year with the liberation of the Kharkiv Oblast up north. The Russians have been mounting periodic counterattacks up and down the line as the Ukrainians are making incremental gains through the defensive belts. For the most part, those counterattacks are being handily forced back. They're causing significant casualties. I've been hearing numbers pretty much every day. The numbers they're talking about are in the vicinity of 300 to 600 casualties on the Russian side. So the Russians are taking fairly significant losses. And to clarify, when I'm saying casualties in this case, I'm not referring to a combination of dead and wounded. I'm talking about confirmed dead. So those are pretty significant numbers. If you're thinking about, let's say, on average 500 a day, that means you're looking at 3,500 a week. That's not a low number. That's not something most armies can sustain over a long haul. Plus, we've got all the stresses that are going on within the Russian nation itself because of the anger and dissatisfaction with what's happening on the front lines. We know that there have been a number of recruiting offices inside Russia that have been firebombed by their own people. In many cases, the people conducting these firebombings are elderly pensioners. So we're not talking the younger people who are likely to get called up for service. We're talking about, one would presume, their fathers or grandfathers. So that shows you how tense things are getting. We also know that the Ukrainians have been carrying out a series of drone strikes inside Russia, hitting confirmed military targets. One of the most notable was a couple of drone strikes that occurred against the same building in Moscow, hitting different floors of that building on different days. The building is known to house a number of Russian government, particularly information technology-related offices. So obviously they're making a point to try to hit targets that will help reduce Russia's capability of getting their propaganda message out, reduce their ability to coordinate efforts to keep their own troops in supply, to get the message out to their people about how great and glorious Putin is, etc., etc. One of the other interesting events in the past couple of days was there is a maritime drone that's one of those little radio-controlled boats. A strike made by those against a Russian ship that was in Novorossiysk. It's a amphibious ship, a Ropucha LST, and they didn't sink said vessel, but there have been photos shown of it, and it's pretty much going to be out of the war at this point. It's listing heavily, sitting very low in the water. Apparently the drone boat exploded against the hull, caused major rupture, flooded out interior spaces, presumably engineering spaces. So that's a notable loss for the Russian Navy in the Black Sea.
Let's we got that. Oh yes.
No, I was going to say that's kind of a brief overview summary of what's been going on in the past week.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, but we do have footage of that. We've got footage of the drone striking that building that you were talking about. Let's start with the maritime drone.
Sure.
This is that drone. We believe this is that drone. Yep. We believe this is the same drone that was used. You can see it's a stealth drone. It's a water drone. It's got a camera on top. For those, I swear to God, it's like playing a video game. I don't want to say that, but oh my God.
Well, in a lot of ways, that's what many of these little drone operations, not just boats, but also the aerial drones, it's almost like playing a video game. You're, controlling a little joystick. In some cases, they're literally using video game controllers to drive these things around, and you drive it into your target. Camera on that thing on the boat there is not meant as a let's capture the attack, although that's a nice side effect, but it's basically giving the guy who's driving the boat the view of what the boat sees so he can drive it into the target. All
right, well, let's watch him do that. This is, we're in for a show. Let's go. So this is the attack. It's like watching a video game. It's really kind of
yeah, it is.
Yeah. So this was obviously just released. I think this one was the one released by The Independent. You can see it heading towards that ship. I can only imagine what the guys are feeling as they're doing this. Because these do get shot down and observed, but in the middle of the night, they're very hard to see.
Yeah.
That's it. And then this is that ship now. As you can see, it's listing heavily. And we've been told it is no longer combat effective. It cannot be used to engage in combat operations in any way whatsoever. So that's the drone and the drone attack. This is the attack on in Moscow.
The building in Moscow that we were talking about.
Which the first attack, Russia said that the first time that this attack happened, Russia said that this drone had been shot out of the sky and that was not their intended target. But then another drone appears to have gotten shot out of the sky and hit the exact same target. So either that's these guys should all buy lottery tickets. It's so lucky, or Ukraine is hitting its targets with relative
the intended target twice.
Yeah. To be fair, I mean, Russia has successfully shot down a number of drones, but a number are also going through and hitting the target. We're going to have the audio on for this one. It's a little difficult. These are civilians watching the strike, and let's watch.
Ah!
All right, so obviously being very effective, and the war is definitely coming to Moscow. The ship was in this region here, so the ship strike was that bottom, so it's a little past Crimea. It is definitely inside Russia. Yeah, that one right there.
It's yeah, it's that one.
Now,
on the other side of Crimea.
I think you said between 8 and 10 brigades have been held back in reserve. Can't those brigades be used on the front line? Why haven't those brigades been deployed if this is the counteroffensive?
The big problem is when you commit forces into action, it's very complicated and difficult to extricate them from the action later on. So the idea is you hold these forces in position and you wait for the breach in the line to be made so that you can then send these reserves in to exploit the gap that you've created. They rush through this hole into the rear areas of the Russian forces, disrupting logistics, command and control, outflanking the other portions of the front line on either side of the breach, forcing those areas to collapse and withdraw. And you enlarge your breach that way, and it's the way you conduct operations. The problem also is that if you send all of these forces in one sector, you end up kind of crowding your own avenue of approach. This isn't, linear warfare like the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, where everybody lines up in a big line and you just advance on the enemy, because it's very easy to take forces out like that. What you need is a lot of maneuver space so your troops can use cover to approach close enough to the target to be able to deliver lethal fires onto that target. And it's not a case of more is better. It's in many cases a situation where you want to have the right amount of forces with the right kind of equipment and the right training to create that breach. And then you need a different kind of skill set and equipment to exploit said breach. That's why a lot of those reserves are being held out.
So you said this before. So when you get shot at, your natural instinct is to not only find cover, but find other people because there's safety in numbers. So your instinct when you get shot at is to go run and be where all the people are. And what you had said, if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, when Ukrainians get shot at, they tend to actually spread out more. When Russians get shot at, they all run back and group together. Why is that a problem?
The problem when you concentrate everybody in one area is that you're vulnerable to somebody dumping artillery or mortar rounds or what have you on that position, and you get much higher casualties. It also means that your fires, and speaking from the Russian perspective here, your fires against approaching Ukrainian forces become more predictable, more focused, because you don't, with a longer, more spread out force, you have different angles you can engage a target from. If everybody's crowded into the same little bunker and they're shooting out of one little, firing slit, then the Ukrainians know, well, as long as you don't go in this sector and come around these sides, you're not going to get shot at. So it's really easy to outflank them. Excuse me, I've got crazy dogs.
So flanking them becomes a lot easier when you do that.
Right.
Okay, so you don't necessarily want to throw all your forces into one place. Okay, so that makes sense. So basically, we've talked about this. So we are definitely in the middle of a counteroffensive, but the counteroffensive that we've all been waiting for, we're still really waiting for. So what, if I understand correctly, what you're saying hopefully is going to happen is there's going to be a break in the line somewhere, which is taking longer than anticipated. There were a lot more mines. The Russians had a lot of time build up defenses here, which they seem to have done well. But a lot of the Ukrainian forces are already reaching dragon teeth positions. We had talked about that last time. So what they're looking for is a break, and then once that break happens, they're going to pour those reserves through, and then we're going to see the full, presumably, we're going to see the full commitment of Ukrainian forces at that point, and a attempt to take back as much ground as possible. Is that roughly what we're looking at and what you're projecting?
That would be an accurate statement. So looking at the map you currently have up, if you look kind of dead center, there's that big white push into what is the otherwise pink-controlled Russian sector. That's one of the deepest penetrations that the Ukrainian assault forces have made thus far. To explain so that your viewers understand this, they're still at the tip of that particular salient that has been created. They're still running up against prepared Russian defensive positions.
Okay.
That's how thick these defensive belts the Russians constructed over the winter are. So getting through that area is not going to be an easy proposition. And as you noted, they are very heavily mined, the approaches to those positions. And so that kind of makes it difficult to spread out and attack from multiple angles, because you need to clear those mines out of the way to approach the Russian defensive positions. So often what's happening is you end up with, one mine clearance vehicle or something, created a fairly narrow path through the minefield, and then all the other vehicles and personnel are walking down that one pathway that's been cleared. And it's fairly easy in that case for the Russians to just zero artillery fires in on that one pathway.
All right, so that makes a lot of sense. That explains why things are slowing down. By the way, where is Starsky right now? So we've mentioned, for those of you just joining us, Starsky is in Donbass. I don't know if you know where on this map roughly he is. I don't want to give away. In case any Russians are watching,
I honestly don't know.
Do we have a picture? Yeah. Okay. So we're not going to give away his coordinates. So
if you look at the map you're showing right now, if you look kind of center on the southern end of that map, you'll see Donetsk. Okay, that's kind of the area we're talking about when we talk about the Donbass. From kind of there to either side, about half the distance up to the top, and assume another half the distance down towards the bottom. That's where Bakhmut was, that kind of area where fighting is.
So
this is the area where the two independent republics, the Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics, were established.
All right. So so he's not, and like I said, I always feel guilty when he takes the time to let me know that. I mean, I'm glad he's letting me know that everything's okay, and he's letting me know, but he is, it's just like, I'm going to try to make the show, and it's like, wait a minute, you're there on the map, and you're going to try to make the show?
See those little red artillery bombs? Yeah, well, stay out of that artillery area, please.
Yeah, just, I'll tell you what, why don't you just keep your eyes out? I don't want to be, but it's a little weird. We had on Anna from Ukraine, and we were talking to her, actually it was Anastasia, and all of a sudden air raid sirens go off. She's like, no, we're fine. I'm going to keep streaming. And it's just like, well, no, don't you really think you should go find? No, and she of course pointed out the one that really
this happens every night. Don't worry about it.
Jesus, it's a little weird streaming with people who are in danger. But then a missile landed reasonably close to her. It hit one of her neighbors, and she had said something which was a little surprising. She said, the first immediate thing you feel is relief that it didn't hit you. And then she said the second thing you feel is guilt because it still hit somebody. That was a little tough to to take. All right, so that's it. Starsky is somewhere in that region around all of those little red dots, so we are absolutely wishing him the best.
Presumably, yeah.
Presumably, we don't know. Yeah. So we know he's in the field. So $10 from Writer's Eye. Sharky, keep your head down and your ass lower. Stay safe, brother. Amen. And we're going to send that. We're going to send all of that to the Vatra Volunteer Organization, which also, by the way, for those of you who don't know what this organization does, they send needed supplies to units up at the front, and Starsky's unit is one of them. So you are any super chats, stickers that we get, we send all of that to them, and it will go directly to units, including Starsky's, up at the front lines. So, and if you don't want to do that through Super Chat, you can see a link down below. You can learn a little bit more about this organization, and you can support them on your own. By no means do you have to go through us. So thank you very much for that. So Putin came on, I think it was yesterday. It was, I think, today, our time, yesterday for him, and said that Ukraine has not made any gains whatsoever, and there's been no damage done. Now, he said this, actually couldn't have been yesterday because, so I'm trying to get the timing right. He said this shortly after the ship was hit. So, obviously, it's more of his BS. How much progress has Ukraine made thus far? Is it accurate that they have not been pushing the Russian forces back, or has it just been slow?
They have been pushing the Russian forces back. It's slow. It's also not what I think some people have thought was going to happen, which is this giant broad front approach where everything would solely be pushed back at once. It's not. They have committed, depending on whose information you're going from, the Ukrainians have committed about 3 to 4, maybe 5 of their reserve brigades as offensive forces right now. And they are pushing at various sectors of the line, trying to create the breach. The rest of the reserves, as we talked about before, are being held back, waiting for that breach to occur. That's where things stand at the present moment.
We have a comment here. Slava Ukraini. So no Starsky again. We're stuck with just Nick. Really? What am I? Swiss cheese? No. At least we have the commander. Fucking asshole.
I'm sorry about that, folks.
Well, apparently you're the star of the show. Although, again, if your dogs make an appearance, I have a feeling
true.
You're going to know what it's like
to come in without being in the middle of a fight. We're both superseded.
Yeah, you'll be in the back seat with me. Thank you for your support, I guess. We're just gonna rename it and just like the Commander Show with maybe Nick if we feel like having a lot of charity. Poland has accused Belarus of preparing to enter the war and to attack Ukraine. They say they have warned against against Belarus doing it, and they say that this is an attempt to destabilize NATO. A, what is going on? B, why would it destabilize NATO? And C, why is it Poland that's the one bringing the news?
Well, 3 things. Number one, we know that Wagner Group moved a portion of their forces into training camps in Belarus. And those training camps are located fairly near the Belarusian-Polish border. And there's, I think, been some sensitivity, justifiably so, to some of the training maneuvers that are going on that could easily be interpreted as preparations for an attack. The notion of what amounts to maybe a brigade of Wagnerites attacking Poland, which has at this point, one of the larger military organizations in all of NATO. That's a good way to eliminate the Wagner Right Brigade in no time.
Oh.
So go ahead. But they're trying to be provocatory. It's to keep NATO off balance. We know that a couple of Russian helicopters strayed into Polish airspace last week and left before Polish forces that have been scrambled to react to this intrusion were able to get to the scene. That kind of behavior by the Russians is fairly common. It's hand in glove with the incidents we see where their aircraft will buzz drones or reconnaissance flights that are flying in international airspace over the Baltic or over the Black Sea or what have you. It's just they're trying to act tough, act provocatory, hopefully generate something that will then give them an excuse to, go to the UN or some other international forum and, claim we're being attacked by the evil NATO, that kind of thing. Except you're the ones that have been doing all the attacking. So, but any authoritarian regime, the moment they claim you're doing something, it means they've been doing it themselves.
Every accusation is a confession.
Yeah, exactly.
So, President Zelensky's wife made an appeal today for people to not forget Ukraine. In your estimation, this being a little out of your field, not that we'd ever ask you a question completely out of your field of expertise. Look at like half the show last night. But at any rate, there's a comment. I started to feel good again. Somebody here in this comment was talking about how I'm a great host. Like, Nick, you're a great host. You're awesome. You are totally the wind under Commander Lance's wings. I was like, fucking son of a... Okay, so how much of a concern is it, people losing interest in Ukraine? How much of a problem is it?
I think we're already seeing signs of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we really are. I know that we've seen pressure within the U.S. Congress about, why are we giving all this stuff to the Ukrainians? Don't we need it for ourselves? Well, first off, the one thing I think that needs to be clarified is most of what we're giving to the Ukrainians is surplus equipment of ours. It's stuff that we're no longer using. Will you be quiet? Sorry. Anyway,
your dog is just really displeased that people are getting disengaged and just trying to
he's upset.
Yes.
So the issue is that it plays to a certain political demographic when you say things like that. So it's being manipulated for domestic purposes to do those things, but it's also occurring in other NATO nations. We're also seeing a degree of what I can only call donor fatigue, except it's not exactly that. And for example, Poland, which has a huge number of Ukrainian refugees living there. And a lot of the Polish people in the areas where the refugee camps are getting tired of the imposition that these people have on the local economy, on local goods or services provided by the government, etc. We tend to forget, because here in the U.S. we don't have a direct flood of these refugees who've been deposited on us. This war has been going on now well over a year and a half. And since the very beginning, there's been this huge number of refugees that are now living in nearby European countries, waiting for the war to end so they can go home. But while they're there, they create a burden, let's be honest, on an economy and social service network that isn't designed to house or serve that large a volume of additional people. And they've effectively, if you think about it, kind of become quasi-permanent residents waiting for this to all wrap up. So it's understandable that the longer this goes on, the more of that kind of donor fatigue is going to occur. And I think to a large extent, that right now is the primary Russian strategy, which is to prolong this war long enough that the governments are pressured by voters to stop supporting Ukraine, to bring that focus home and deal with issues that are being postponed because of funding having to go to support Ukrainian refugees.
Democracies also are notoriously have short attention spans.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, that's a good point too. Well, yeah. And that's I mean, if when we were fighting COVID, it was like also too. It was like it was harder to fight COVID in a democracy than it is in a dictatorship. Not that.
Oh yeah, I've had to wear this mask for 3 weeks now. Oh my God, what's wrong with you people?
Tell me about it.
It isn't a 30-second TV ad where you take the pill and 5 seconds later you have a big smile on your face and you're running through the fields. This is reality. It takes time. People
I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to tie both hands behind your back and see if you can answer it. So I'm going to ask you a question, tie both hands behind your back, see if you can answer it. Why does supporting Ukraine offer absolutely any benefit to the U.S.? And I'm going to say accepting two things that you cannot discuss. One, just as a humanitarian, for humanitarian reasons, and excluding. I was thinking of another benefit and I can't. So let's ignore the humanitarian reasons and let's ignore halting Russian aggression, which I think is extraordinarily important for NATO. We're going to ignore those two big things, especially because they take some nuance and they take some understanding of geopolitics to understand. So let's drop two very, very good enlightened self-interest reasons for the U.S. to be involved. We're going to drop just humanitarian reasons, and we're going to drop keeping Russia in check. What benefit is it of the U.S. to assist the Ukrainians?
The first thing I would point out is that from a geopolitical strategic standpoint, if you let Ukraine fall, especially now that we've been supporting them for a year and a half, it sends a message to every other potential enemy around the globe that to win your struggle against the U.S., regardless of what it is, all you have to do is outlast American public opinion. So everybody that isn't Russia around the globe is watching this war very closely to see how the U.S. and our NATO allies react to what's going on. So to put this in context, let's assume we say, okay, well, enough is enough. It's been a year and a half, 2 years, whatever. You're on your own, suckers. And we bag out. Does China then take that as an indication that Taiwan is up for grabs? That attacking Vietnam or the Philippines is a possibility? Because the U.S. has no heart for staying in a fight. That's just one example. And then you can take it all over the globe, wherever there are little petty despots that want to do something. That's one reason. The second reason I think it's critical is that we know that there are a number of vital strategic resources that are centered in Ukraine. Most notably, grain, agricultural products. We, as Americans or Canadians, don't need Ukrainian agriculture to survive. We provide all our own and we export. The trouble is we can't export enough to support the entire rest of the globe. And there are a considerable number of nations that absolutely depend on Ukrainian grain for survival. It's an existential issue for them. If you let that strategic resource fall under the control of the Russians, what does it do? It means Russia can use that as leverage to effectively blackmail all of the countries that are dependent on that Ukrainian grain into becoming their client states, which complicates the geopolitical equation. So
I also, yeah.
I think, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I also think so. You know, it obviously is a cost to help Ukraine. But first of all, it's not really a cost in American lives, and that's worth noting. Ukraine is paying with their own lives, and they're paying to fight a longtime enemy of the United States. The U.S. is paying in American dollars. But we're also paying, I think, a lot less than is usually reported. So if we send a whole bunch of our older systems and they say, well, this is the value of the systems and this is what we're paying. Yeah, but we weren't really using them. We were paying to keep them housed in areas that are now free to house other systems. And
much of the equipment we've sent is excess equipment. The U.S. military is no longer using those systems.
And the newer
keep a lot of older equipment. Yeah, we keep a lot of older equipment on hand to provide to our allies. It's part of we're supporting your defense as part of this larger cooperative mutual defense pact, not just NATO, but all the other ones we have all over the place. And so we give them this excess equipment, which they can still use, which we may see as, this isn't the top of the line that we want to equip our forces with. So the expense to the actual American taxpayer in many cases is far less than you would think at face value. When somebody says, oh, we're sending Ukrainians 150 Bradleys. Oh my God, our troops are going to be short and then we're going to have to buy more Bradleys replacements. Like, no. Those are excess. We don't need them anymore. We've already expended them from our stocks. The only thing they'd be used for is to be cannibalized for parts for other ones. And even then, that's only a minimal savings. Plus, we're actually paying to store and maintain these pieces of equipment in our own, storage yards. If you give it to the Ukrainians, it's off our books. It goes to them. It's minimal cost to us. And we're helping, I hesitate to say ally because Ukraine isn't technically an ally, but we'll call it a potential ally.
Certainly a struggling to westernize country that the more countries that westernize, the better for the U.S., just for the most part across the board. Take a look at China and Germany as a start. And I assume also, I mean, not to be too cynical, but if you're just interested in the U.S. military is, while not fighting directly, getting experience from this. We're testing weapon systems and we're watching live how our weapon systems can be used and made more efficient in ways that we couldn't learn through just testing or military exercises. We're watching it actually get used. And Ukraine's been very good about forwarding that information to us. Is that accurate?
Yeah. The other part of that, and this sounds almost ghoulish to say it, but there are an enormous number of lessons learned coming out of this war that we are watching very closely. And because we have such a good relationship with the Ukrainians, I'm sure that they're giving us a lot more of that information than we would otherwise be able to obtain. And from those lessons, we can improve our own equipment, our own doctrine, our own training, all of that. And we're not having to sacrifice troops and equipment in combat to learn those lessons.
Yeah,
as I said, it's ghoulish to put it that way.
It is. It
but
is.
That is. It is, but it's also an extremely important element to consider.
If you're an American worried about American lives, saying, why should my taxpayer money go to Ukraine? Because it's also saving American lives. It's they're dying out there is saving American lives, and it is ghoulish, but there's a reality if they need that too. So we had a question, and this is a good one. I think we're going to start to wrap up after this. But the one last thing is those grain shipments. In fact, we talked about what they're trying to do there. Putin, basically, it's almost a win-win, but it's a horrific strategy. But if he can stop stop grain coming out of Ukraine, one of two things is going to happen. Either out of fear that there's going to be mass starvations, we are going to negotiate with Russia and release some of the sanctions against them in exchange for letting that grain out so that lives are saved, and so Putin wins. Not necessarily the war, but that's a win for Putin. Or we refuse to negotiate. There's mass starvation in a number of countries that create refugees, economic refugees, starving people that are going into especially southern NATO countries, putting even more pressure on those countries to say, hey, I don't care how or why these starving refugees are knocking on our door.
Damn thing.
We have to stop it. We don't care whose fault it is. Stop it. And anything like that is just going to help Russia. So he is essentially weaponizing starvation to help him. So given that, a couple of ships ran the Russian blockade, and my understanding is that they actually got through. What's your understanding of what the status is right now on Ukrainian grain shipments?
My understanding is that a couple of ships, and I think it's only 3 at this point, have actually gotten through to Ukrainian ports and are loading grain. I don't think any have actually left Ukraine loaded yet. How they're doing this, they're playing those cards very close to their chest, so we don't know. But I suspect what they're doing is going up through territorial waters of Bulgaria and Romania to remain as protected as possible, and then making a short nighttime dash through waters that they feel fairly comfortable have been cleared of mines to get into Ukrainian ports. Is that going to be, it alleviates some of the pressure, but is that the permanent solution to this problem? I don't think it is. I think something needs to be done that's on a larger scale, so you're not just, onesie twosie little shipping pockets coming through to bring stuff out. I think you need to have a much more constant flow of grain being shipped out.
Do you have any optimism or any idea what that might look like at this point? What practically we might see in the future?
Yeah, I suspect that what's going on is there are talks going in NATO discussing how we want to try to handle this. How far are we willing to push the envelope to protect this shipping? Because let's face it, if for example, you allow Turkish or Romanian or Bulgarian or even American ships to escort grain carriers, and the Russians attack and you hit the American escort, that's effectively putting us at war right there. And everybody wants to avoid that. We don't want somebody to have a situation where they can say, Article 5, dudes, let's go.
All right,
so
hold on.
The idea is, go ahead. No, go ahead.
You, please.
Okay. I think so. The planning sessions are probably going on and are very intense within the NATO Council about how to react to what's going on. And the different NATO players all will have different views of what they want. For example, we know Erdogan has been saying things about, oh, yeah, I want the grain shipments to continue. I will try to broker a peace deal. But he has made no effort whatsoever to even propose putting Turkish interests on the line to make this happen. The reason the grain deal was so important to him earlier was because of the Turkish parliamentary elections. Those are over. His party, although it lost a certain percentage in parliament, still is the majority party. And in coalition with his partners, they have effectively an absolute control on what goes on in the parliament. So he no longer has a impetus, a reason to want to push this and paint himself as a hero. He got what he needed for that short-term political gain. So they're going to be urging caution because they don't want to be caught up with anything. And the other thing that is important there is, people have noted, there's a lot of not entirely legal trade that goes through Turkey to Russia right now. And I, knowing what I know about Turkey, I'm pretty certain that a fair amount of the fees that are being processed so that those shipments can go through is being diverted to certain non-traceable accounts of certain high political officials.
Say it isn't so. Well, and Peter 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐿, I know, talked about that and suggested, too, that NATO actually deliberately looks the other way on that because it means, despite all the sanctions, Russia still has something to lose. So if NATO, just by allowing some illegal transactions that are going through from Turkey to wherever, but presumably including Russia, including China trading with Russia, there's still something to lose. Because if you take absolutely everything, at that point, it's just, drop nukes or whatever it is they're going to do. Which, by the way, a new video just came out. Lieutenant General Ben Hodges just basically did a symposium. He organized a symposium on the threat of Russian nukes, what it really means, and he labeled this as a way to raise the average American's nuke IQ. To understand really what nukes are, what the availability are. I'm going to send you the link. I will add that link to the description. It's not in there right now, but we will have Ben Hodges on in about 3 weeks. I am really looking forward to it, and I'm going to ask him about that nuclear question because I think that's an important one. That is a concern on everyone's mind, but he just did a 2-hour symposium on it. So there's a lot to do there. I have to ask my producer a question, so just hold on. I'm going to mute 1 second, and then I'll be back in 1 sec. So let me just... Okay, I'm going to mute.
Sure.
All right, there. So, Jim? Yeah, no, I'm muted. They can't hear me. Do I really have to read all the super chats? No. Yeah, I know they gave. No, I'm not going to read this one. I don't care. I don't care about the contract. I am not reading the super chat. I will give him his money back. No. I'm not going to read this. You cannot make me read this super chat. If I have to read this, I swear to God, I could just walk.
It's phenomenal how well his mute button works, isn't it, folks?
All right. So, thank you all. We have 2 super chats. First one, Sinister Porpoise. Thank you so much for your support. 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐼𝐿 from Sinister Porpoise. And I can't make out the text on the other one. No, I said I can't make out I can't read it. No, I can't read what it said. Oh, I put on my glasses and now I can read it. LG, $9.99. Does Nick really have to speak? Can't he just fumble the buttons and be quiet? Slava Ukraine. Sinister, thank you so much for that super chat.
The risk of you doing that proposal means that they have to listen to me drone on and on for no time.
No, the
fill
risk
up
of that is
dead
if
air.
I start, if I'm like producing the show full time, you think we have audio issues now. You think the show's screwed up now?
Button do. I haven't pressed this in 5 minutes.
Yeah. So, all right. So, all right. Well, I think that gives us a pretty good rundown. Again, apologies, everyone. I am gonna send Starsky just a little message. And Starsky, if you ever end up watching this, probably won't because he's got better things to do. But you've got one job, my friend. That's stay alive. So do well. He is in Donbass right now. He is really sort of right in the middle of things, and so that's why he's not here. Despite that, he said he was going to try to be on. And but he doesn't have internet out there. It turns out on the front lines of a war zone, nobody bothered to like make sure that the internet is streaming ready. It's just basically they can text like coordinates to each other and shit like that. They can't stream. So I think they should all just go home. I mean, if you can't stream, what's the point? Anyways, we absolutely wish Starsky
really
the
a
best.
war if nobody's putting it up on Twitter?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no shit. Oh dear Lord! Well, I keep thinking of the Madonna's thing when Madonna was dating Warren Beatty, and she did whatever her documentary was about her life. But at one point, she just starts talking, and then she can't use Twitter or whatever. And she was almost thinking of like not going on stage or whatever because she was so upset. And Warren Beatty's just sitting on the couch. He goes, "Yeah, I mean, why do something if you can't tweet about it?" And I'm just like, "Oh shit!" I was like, I keep thinking about that one. It was just, and he was so done. Oh, but
narcissism writ large.
There's a reason Elon Musk is perfect for Twitter. All right. So, thank you all. Let's see. Yeah, all right. Thank you all for joining us. So, like I said, we are going to have Ben Hodges on twice. We're going to do 2 separate interviews. I spoke with Hodges and I made an unusual proposal. I wasn't sure how I was going to do this, especially military people tend to be a little more private in my experience than most people, and they don't want to tell their story, and they're usually pretty humble, and Hodges is definitely among those. But I asked him to come back twice. Once to talk about Ukraine and NATO, because there's no way I am having the number 2 guy at NATO, former Supreme Commander of all NATO ground forces across the fucking globe, former commander of all U.S. forces in Europe. There's no way I'm going to have him on and not ask about those things and not talk about Ukraine. That's not going to happen. If I had to choose one or the other, I'd prefer the second show, but we're going to do that one because that's what the audience wants to see. But I was able to get a second show out of him. And the other show is just going to be a personal interview. I think in order for someone to rise to those levels of his career, he obviously had to sacrifice a lot, had to make a lot of choices. And I want to talk to him about how he got where he is, why he decided to do what he's done, and to sort of reflect on him and get an understanding of who he is as a person, because he strikes me as a rather remarkable man. So we're going to have both of those last week in August. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to hopefully have Starsky on a week from today when we do our next Starsky show, next Ukraine update. That's 3 p.m. Eastern every single Friday. We're going to have Commander Lance McMillan back for an informal chat. Hopefully we're going to invite either Sunday or Brooks, and we'll get one of them on. I'm going to shoot for trying to get Brooks on. Brooks, they're both amazing people. Brooks is a very interesting one to talk to. We'll see if we can have him on downtime coming up Thursday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and on Monday, this coming Monday, we're also going to do a rundown, talk about the week's news in the U.S. Obviously, we're going to end up talking about Trump, what's going on with the election, the indictments, and we are still expecting the Georgia indictment at any time, and that one's going to be very big for other reasons we've discussed before, but isn't. We'll bring it up. We'll talk about it Monday, and if we have any breaking news on that or anything else, you will see it. Please do like, subscribe, and share. I hate asking that as much as anybody. I hate asking for that more than you hate hearing it. But on the flip side, it helps every YouTuber in the algorithm. That's why all of us sit here and beg for it, because it actually really does help. So if you like the show, like, subscribe, and share the links. Show this to other people that you think would be interested in it. If they're not going to be interested, don't. I don't want people watching just because, let's get people who are interested. We work very hard to make this good content. If you think it's good content, share it. We are going to have Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, a supporter hang. It's going to be an open hang for all supporters. It's anyone who wants to come in, stream with me. It's going to be an open hang. Anyone who has ever super chatted, ever donated, everyone who's ever super chatted except for that last super chat. I'm going to remember his name. But other than him, anybody who wants to come in and hang with us can hang. You can be in the live chat. You're going to get that information. It's going to be on our Discord. It's also going to be on the member page. So if you're a member, you can come in. If you've ever super chatted, if you have modded for us, anybody who's donated time, money, or anything like that in time, you can join us on our patron page. Anyone who's a patron can also join us for that hang. It's going to be a lot of fun. We can talk about whatever topics you guys want to talk about. We can talk about the show. We can talk about politics. We can talk about anything you want to talk about. That'll be Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, and there's still time to support the channel and join us for that. That's what we're going to be doing. Thank you all once again so much for your support and for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on Monday morning for the rundown and Monday night for the supporter hang. Thank you all. See you on the Discord and see you on Monday. Have a good night.
Take care.